Godzilla 2014. We are officially in the MonsterVerse era, y'all. We have made it so far. But this is a movie that, in a lot of ways, is very special to me. I remember exactly where I was when I first saw the trailer in late 2013. I can't remember exactly what movie I saw it in, but this was before I knew what YouTube was. So any trailer that I saw was pretty much in the theaters. And so when I first saw that trailer, I was blown away because at that point, I knew what Malcolm in the Middle was. And the line drop of Bryan Cranston saying, "And he's going to bring us back to the Stone Age," sold me immediately. This was the first American Godzilla film since Zilla. And there was nowhere really to go but up from there. Honestly, Warner Brothers and Legendary Pictures really, their job was done for them. But they tapped Gareth Edwards to direct. And initially this movie went through a quite bit of development. There was even supposed to be a movie coming out called Godzilla 3D to the Max, which was supposed to be released in 2007, but it never saw the light of day. Honestly, Godzilla 3D to the Max sounds like the most mid 2000s title I've ever heard. David S. Goyer was tapped to write the script in 2011, but he left the project. It was just a revolving door, but it eventually fell to Gareth Edwards, and he took over the creative reins. He was heavily inspired by movies like Alien and Jaws, basically 70s era blockbusters, in creating this movie, and you can really tell. Because of Bryan Cranston's popularity, thanks to a little show called Breaking Bad, this movie got a lot of hype. And when it came out, the response was very divisive, to say the least. There are some that really liked it and others that hated it and thought that there was no Godzilla in it at all. I, as someone who is 10 years onward, can tell you that I have always really liked this movie and I will defend it. I can understand if someone wouldn't like this movie, with the common complaints of there being Godzilla's only there every once in a while, the humans are not exactly lighting up the screen with charisma. I can sort of understand that. However, I think Gareth Edwards did a really good job of really producing kind of an homage to the original Godzilla. He even cited that as another one of his inspirations for this movie as well. But instead of turning Godzilla into a villain, he actually turns him into a bit of a hero, taking on the evil Mutos, these weird bug-looking things. And the bugs basically represent nature trying to balance itself against the carelessness of humanity, and Godzilla basically being humanity's protector in a way. Like I mentioned, Bryan Cranston is in this movie and he dies. I'm sorry for the spoiler, but the movie is coming up on 10 years old at this point, which is kind of sad because Bryan Cranston, thanks to Breaking Bad, had a bit of a career resurgence of sorts. He was always around, Malcolm in the Middle. He was the Saxky, the neighbor in The King of Queens. So Bryan Cranston was always there, but it was Breaking Bad that really solidified him as like him for a few years. Bryan Cranston maximizes his minutes. That is what I will say. The rest of the human characters are just kind of there. I like Aaron Taylor Johnson as an actor, and I like Elizabeth Banks as an actress. They both would go on to be in the MCU as Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch, respectively. And yes, I do understand that the two people that in this movie that are married are portrayed as siblings in the MCU. The best I can describe these characters is functional. They basically grease the wheels of the story so that it can move along at a steady pace. And as far as that goes, they succeed. They're not the worst humans I've ever seen in a Godzilla movie, or at least they are not the most boring. I mean, some of the Showa era humans, you could literally just cut and paste and no one would notice the difference. This movie really shines is the star of the show, Godzilla. When Godzilla is on screen at any point in this movie, it's something special. From his roar, which is played in front of every single one of these videos, to his battles with the Mutos, Gareth Edwards knew exactly what he was doing protecting the mystique of Godzilla. While it is rather disappointing that Godzilla didn't face off against Ghidorah or Mothra right off the bat, I do appreciate that they protected Godzilla so much to the point where when he does show up on screen, you're like, well, shit's on. The best part of the movie is the final fight where Godzilla faces off against the Muto. You see the nuclear breath. He pries open the Muto's breath and just goes, ah, and he breathes down and just like basically barbecues the poor Muto. It's crazy. Because of those scenes in particular at the end, I'm going to be a little more generous with my rating on this one. With that, Ken Watanabe, the great score, and just generally this movie feeling epic about 90% of the time, I'm going to give this a great rating. I can understand if you don't like this movie. I'll even side with you on certain parts of it. But I still just have nothing but respect for the direction that Gareth Edwards went in when it comes to creative. And this was honestly just fantastic. Like just a beautiful looking movie too. Like whoever decided to soundtrack the 2001 A Space Odyssey soundtrack to the Halo jump, I hope they got a raise. But, and I ask this knowing what the comment section might look like, but what did you think of Godzilla 2014? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to read what you have to say. And starting next week, we will begin with Toho's most recent Godzilla film, Shin Godzilla.